Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this cute little froggy character. If you'd like to join along, here's the kit list. And here's more close-up picture of the frog himself. So here we go. I've coloured up some sugar paste and added a small quantity of CMC to it just to help it firm up. The colour is either gooseberry green, or you can use spruce green or foliage green, whatever you fancy is your frog colour. I'm just going to make this paste into a bit of a sausage shape and then break off 3 fairly even-sized pieces of paste. This is to make sure that I've got enough for the body, for the head and for the limbs. So I've put the other 2 balls into a plastic bag just so they don't dry out, and I've got about 3.5 centimetre diameter ball of paste for the body. I'm going to roll all this up, so I'll give it a good twist, squeeze and roll it really tightly between my palms. This should squeeze all the air out and allow us to form a nice, smooth, crack-free ball. Okay, and I'm just going to roll a slight egg shape. So I want a really fat ball. The idea is to have a plump bottom half, and then the pointy end will be part of his up, be where the head goes. So it's quite rounded. Place the egg-shaped ball with the pointy end towards the top onto a piece of oasis, or you can just put it on a board. You don't need to poke it through anything. And then I'm going to use a kebab stick and insert that through the top. I'm not using a very long kebab stick. I'm using one of those half-length ones. Just drill through the pointy end, trying not to squish your ball, so that the kebab stick comes out the back, and then you can insert the kebab stick so it goes right down to the bottom of the surface and drop your ball into place. This is just going to stabilize it, so when you transfer onto your cake, the kebab stick can sit into the cake and you can be sure that your model's not going to fall off. You can, however, make your figure, and then once it's dry, pull it out of the oasis and cut the bottom with a pair of wire cutters, and then you'll be able to place it directly on top of a cake or onto a cake board. This I'm just going to put to one side for a moment and work with another of the 3rd pieces of paste that we've actually divided. I want to take 2 pieces for the legs. They're going to be approximately 2 centimetre diameter. So using a ruler, just make the shape into a ball and place it over a ruler so that you can see that you've got roughly the right size. So 2 centimetre balls of paste. Match your sizes before you start. Warm up the paste into a nice crack-free ball, and then using the heel of your hand, roll the paste into a cone shape. Taking your Dresden veining tool, the fat end, press down into the fat, towards the end of the fat end, press down and then drag your tool down to the bottom. That's going to make the crease. This is actually the knee part. This is the top of the thigh. So we'll do that with the 2nd piece of paste. Warming up. Nice tight roll into a ball, into a cone shape, and take the fat end of your Dresden tool, press in near the top of the fat end and draw down towards the thigh. And that will give you the 2 frog thighs. Okay, looking at the figure, you can see that it's this part here. So having made the 2 thigh pieces, I now want to create the toes, and they are made up of 1 centimetre balls, and we need 6 because we have 3 toes on each side. So roll your balls so that you have them all roughly the same size. Doesn't matter if a couple are slightly smaller. And once you've got all 6 balls, you can go ahead and shape them into the toes. So nice warmed up piece of paste so it's crack free. Take your finger and place it over the top of the ball and simply press down and roll as you do. By pressing down a bit more in the center, you should end up with a nice bulbous part, which would be the tip end of his toes. Do the same for all 6 balls. So warming up into a ball, rolling the center between your palm and your finger to get a nice rounded end. So now we have 3 toes for each foot, and all we need to do is bring them a little bit together at the narrow end and just press them in a fraction. The thighs are going to sit on top, so that will be fine. The center one, if anything, could be slightly longer. It doesn't really matter though. So they're your frog's feet. The next step is to glue the area that you're going to attach the thigh and the feet to. So on here, just either side, I'm going to give it a decent amount of glue. And this needs to be on there for about 2-3 minutes, just so that it's tacky enough for the thighs to make contact and hold in place. While that's working, we can place the feet on. The feet, the glue on the body will make contact with the end of the foot. So when you've got to lift your model out and put it onto cake, you should find that they'll come off with it. So transfer your funny froggy feet onto the surface of your board or dummy, and then put a little bit of glue on top, and we'll just let that start to soak in a little bit, and as it absorbs into the paste, it will go tacky. Next, we can make the spots for the frog. You can see we've got spots all over the body, so they need to go on in advance of the legs being attached. And I'm using plumbing olives and a tiny little circle cutter so that I have a choice over the difference in sizes. These could just simply be little balls that you flatten and stick on. So that's another way of doing it. But for this frog, I'm going to roll them out. Just a little bit of corn flour onto your surface if you think it's going to stick. And this paste has been paled down with a little bit of white. It's the same green, but it's just a little bit lighter. Give it a warm up again in your hands, but pop it onto the corn floured surface and roll out, not too thinly, maybe 2 millimeters thickness, because you don't want it too thin. It's going to be very difficult to handle. And then we can go ahead and cut a series of dots. And if you cut enough, you've got them for the whole body. A selection of small, medium and large. The plumbing olives you can get from a DIY store quite easily, and you can get different sizes. They're used for copper pipe work. So my smallest one is about 3/4 of a centimetre, and the largest one here is 1.5 centimetres. But I've got them going up to about 3 inches in diameter. So it really depends on what you can get from your DIY store. They're relatively inexpensive, and it's a very clever way of getting a circle cutter. You can also buy proper ones for cake decorating. Or, as I mentioned, make your own little patches to go on. So I'm just going to do a few different sizes just so I have a variation. Attach some of these dots to the surface of the body in advance of putting your legs on. So just put a little bit of glue where you feel you might want a dot. Try not to overdo it because he looks a little bit like he's got chicken pox. Now these are quite difficult to pick up, so I need to bring this to the edge of my surface to be able to pick it up, and then if I turn it over, so I've got the cut side to the back side, because it gives me a nice crisp cut. And vary the sizes that you attach. Try not to crowd his body too much. When you press down, just press around the outside edge so they look like they're attached, but you don't want to make them too pressed on because we want them to keep their shape. Just a small amount of glue to hold it there. So we're going to keep the leftover dots for the rest of his body, but now attach the two thighs that we've made. So just curving this a little bit. And with the marked end into, this needs to go the other way. The marked end, no it doesn't, it was right the first time. The marked end is going to be innermost so that you can see it. And if, because you've put a dot on, you've actually hidden the glue that you'd placed on there, go ahead and put a bit more glue. So these want to be fairly upright. And you'll need to hold them in place for a few moments so that they adhere. The next step is to create the arms. So before we try and make those, put some glue on the side of the body and just a little bit onto each kneecap so that that can start to absorb and become tacky. For the arms, we need 2 1 centimetre balls that will make an arm and a finger together, and 4 1/2 centimetre diameter balls. These will make the fingers a little bit like we did for the toes. The arms are much skinnier than the legs. Firstly, take the 1 centimetre balls and roll those into an elongated cone, and just come into the fat end here and start to roll with your finger to create a bit like a dolly peg, old-fashioned peg that you hang washing on the line with. Then with the 2 smaller balls, roll those into tic-tac shapes, and then turn your finger sideways or roll across them so that you get a plump part as well. They're much skinnier than the legs. If you feel that your hands are a little bit long, then of course you can shorten the shape. So if you also want to just make a cone, you can do that. So I think that's a better shape. I'm actually going to change this one that I made earlier and just roll it into an elongated cone shape. That's just going to give us a nice bulbous end. Okay, so we can create the fingers, the separate fingers for the second hand. And the piece for the arm. So the arm again, it's quite skinny. Just make sure it's nice and warmed up. So cone shape, and then roll your finger to create the bobbly part. These are probably too long at the moment, but we won't know until we've placed them on the body. So just bring the figure that you're creating into play. Check that the legs are still upright. And if I hold the hand or the arm, that's going to be a finger across the body. I can see that it's a little bit long. So I'm just going to pinch the top end of this and neaten it off so that I can fit it onto the body. So that's the first finger, and it's quite nice if you turn that in to be the front, so the innermost digit. Do the same on the other side, so check the size, take off any excess, give it a little tap to flatten and neaten, and then position that again as the first finger. And then you've got the other two fingers to attach, and because you've put the glue on already, that should be quite tacky, so that will take it quite nicely. So we're just going to add in one set of one hand, and then do the same on the other. Again, the center digit could be longer. Now, I want to have the wrist bent, so I'm just going to use a cocktail stick to press in here. And the same on this side to encourage it to stick onto the knee, but just have a little bit of movement to it at the wrist. Pop some glue around the stick, ready for the bow. And now I'm going to show you how to make a collar. The collar part of the bow is made out of a solid disc, and I've got about 2 centimeter diameter of red paste. Give it a good warm up. Just make sure all the colours mix through. And then between your finger and thumb, press it just a little bit. Use corn flour if it's sticky. Just rub a little bit of corn flour onto your fingers. Just press that down till you've got about a 1 centimetre thickness, maybe just under, probably near a 1/2 centimetre. And then just start to flatten it off. We don't want this disc to be too big. It's actually going to help lift the head a little bit. But if it's too flat and fat, then you will find that it will just look strange. It will stick out. So just press around the outside edge and then tap to sharpen the bottom and the top so it's as flat as you can get it. So this is about 1/2 centimetre diameter, sorry, 1/2 centimetre thick when you're ready to stick it on. Bring your model in, and this is going to be fed centrally down and just drop it into place. Now, we can see how much stick we now need to support. So the kebab stick we can trim probably at about 1 inch in height above the collar. So I'm just going to use wire cutters holding on to the top while I snip this off. And then we'll be able to glue just a little bit because we don't want to bleed the red. So just a little bit of glue on the red around the stick and a touch in the front ready to receive the bow once we've made it. And also just a little bit on the front of his chest where the tail of the bow is going to be. I'll just show you. That's the bow in there. Okay. To make the bow, I'm just going to roll some paste to about the same thickness as I did for the little dots. So 2mm will be fine. Try and keep the thickness fairly even. And then using a cutting wheel, cut a strip that's roughly 7 centimeters long. Straighten off the ends using your cutting wheel and pop just a small amount of glue into the middle. Now, because I've rolled out on corn flour, if I turn that over, I'm probably going to have a cleaner finish. So just a small amount of glue into the center and use your cutting wheel, just the tip of it, to help turn over your loops. So we can make this as a ribbon, just a normal ribbon, but an edible ribbon is equally as easy to make. So I've still got my piece of paste here. From here, I can cut another strip that will give me the tails. And then if I cut another strip, I can cut myself a little square, just a small square. If I put a little bit of glue into that join, just crushed that square, so I'm just going to cut another one. Pop that square on top, just curve it a little bit, and that gives me my loop with the tie piece. And now I'll just even this up a fraction. You can use a straight edge to help you neaten up the tail. And this piece we're going to cut in half. One piece could be shorter than the other, so I'm just going to cut that in half here, and then I'm going to have slightly, just marginally longer. The tails will go on first, so just use the end of your cutting wheel as a little aid to lifting. Take your tail and position it underneath the disc that you've made for the ribbon. Little bit of extra glue if you're going to place that directly on top, just so that it's going to hold. It won't need much, and again, you don't want the red to bleed. Then take your other tail and place that overlapping slightly. So now you've got your tails of your ribbon. And the little bow you made, you can just take and stick. If you need to, you can use a cocktail stick just to help you open up the loops. Keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't fall. And that's your bow. Now the head is the hardest bit. We need about 3.5 centimeter diameter of paste. So it'll be the third piece that you pulled off earlier. And just keep a little bit back, because you're going to need that for the eyebrows. Take your piece of paste, give it a good warm up, and initially we're going to roll it into a fat egg shape, the same as the body. So good old twist, good old squeeze between the palms of the hand, and then roll really tight so that you get a nice crack-free ball. Then just roll it a little bit on one side, just holding your hands at an angle. So you've got a fat cone. Now, a little bit of corn flour on your hand, because what we need to do now is start to form a little bit of a shape on the head. So the first thing is just to give it a little bit of a press at the top here, so that we get more of a plump bit towards the fat end. This is going to be where the mouth is. So we want to kind of squeeze it a little bit. So we're starting to create a piece that sticks out. That's from the side. This is from the front. And between my finger and thumb, or if you prefer, you can use your tool, your Dresden veining tool. We can just start to make a little indent where we would want to have the cheeks come out. And using this as my guide, I can then use the side of my thumb and the side of my finger and just get in there and start to squeeze out to get the cheeks. Do the same to the other side. Now, if that goes wrong, you can start again. I'm just going to go with it for the moment because I've added a crack, but it possibly won't show. But what we want to do is just carry on pinching out those cheeks. So from the front, it looks like this. This is the forehead and where the eyes are going to go. The mouth is going to come across here. If I turn it sideways, you can see. And this is the back. Okay. So having sculpted it a little bit, I now want to mark in and open up the mouth area. I've got a little crack here. I'm going to carry on. So starting with the fat end, have the fat end placed sideways so you're pressing into the paste on this side. And then you can do the same on the opposite side. So you're starting so you know where the top of the edges of the mouth are. And then come into the center. Start to break open the mouth. Then we can use the back of the tool to lower down to create an open mouth and chin. So you're starting to smile. And if we turn the tool round now and scoop up inside, that will start to form the upper lip. Now I need to neaten it off. So we've got a big grin now. Just going to push the tool in, just the tip, just to make that grin extra wide and extra narrow. So I'm turning the tool from sideways, turning it down, face down, so we've got the point going in. Takes a bit of fiddling, and this is actually not very easy. So once you've opened up the mouth, I feel like I want to press in here now just to make that chin a bit cuter. If that then means you lose your shape, you can go back with the tool. Here I've got a couple of marks. I just want to rub those out with my fingers. And then we'll bring his top lip just a little bit more. I'm going to dig a hole in there because that's going to be where the tongue goes later on. And then just work a little bit more on those mouth edges. You can also turn the tool face down just beyond the markings and mark in 2 little dimples. So when you've finished, he's going to look a little bit like this, sort of grinning frog. Okay. Now at this point, it's probably easier to pop it onto the model. I've already put a little bit of glue around, and I need to position this part of the head on. So just finding the center point, very, very gently pop the frog head on. So now he's starting to look better. Just if you need to, help open up that mouth just a little bit more before it dries, and make that hole in there a bit bigger for the tongue. Just check the shape of how you want it to be before you allow it to set a little bit. He has 2 nostrils, so we can use again this part of the tool and just mark in 2 little indentations for his nose. And with a bone modelling tool, doesn't matter which end, we just want to create a bit of an indentation to help us work out where the eyes are going to go. And those indentations will create good sockets for the balls that we're going to make to attach. So a little bit of glue in there. And while you're there, a little bit of glue in the tongue area. We're also going to put some little dots onto his head. So we can go ahead now and just decide where we want those. A couple on the back. You might want some on the legs as well, so you can add in there. And this is a good chance to give the eyeball holes a chance to absorb the glue, and while it's becoming tacky, we can add our little dots that we made earlier. Put a crack on that one. Again, just try not to overdo it. And if you want, you could have one on his knee as well. I feel like I want to just make this one slightly smaller to go on his knee. And it's entirely up to you how many of these you put on. So I just put one on there. For the eyes, I can make them as large as you like, but sometimes they look a bit too big, so I wouldn't go larger than 1 centimetre diameter, maybe just under. But match the ball sizes before you start. Make sure they're nice and crack free. And when you're happy, you can go ahead and attach them. This one here is a little bit on the large side, so I'm just going to make it slightly smaller. So here I'm just going to add in my little balls, and I'm going to try and keep them rounded. If I take a little bit of glue and put that around the eyebrow area, I can then make him, with the leftover paste that we've got, a couple of eyebrows. And for the eyebrows, I used maximum 1 centimetre ball of paste. And you want to form a torpedo shape. So 2 balls the same size. Just check they're the same roughly. Crack free, roll it into a sausage, and then roll either side until you get a torpedo shape. This one's a little bit cracky. It's important to be fussy. Okay, so now we've got the 2 torpedo shapes. Bring your model back into play And we can put those around the top edge where we've glued to outline the eyeballs. And all of a sudden, the eyeballs don't look so scary. So the next step is to work on just the final bit to put the blacks for the eyes, but also we have a tongue. So knowing that the black is very heavily pigmented, I'm going to work on the tongue first. And the tongue doesn't want to be too huge. Again, it's probably no more than a 1 centimetre diameter ball of red paste. Get that nice and warmed up. Roll it into a cone shape and tap it just once to flatten it a little bit. But I've kept it fairly rounded, so it's not thin. Position that in the pointy end into his mouth. Curl it over a fraction. Take a cocktail stick and very careful without poking the green of his head. Lay that on the inner part of his tongue and press down and come out. That will secure it, but also it gives him that fold in the tongue center. To make the eyeballs, or should we say the pupils, I've got a 3/4 centimetre olive as a round cutter. Take a piece of black paste and roll it slightly thinner than we had for the spots. Cut 2 shapes, or you could make this and just press it into a disc shape. Just make sure that your paste is not stuck to the board while you do this. If it is, you end up with a distorted shape as it comes off. So it will become more oval rather than rounded. So now you have the 2 pieces. We need to cut a little wedge out of the eye, which gives you the idea that he's got a highlight in his eye. Okay, so give it a little snip. Try very carefully not to flatten the eyes. And then you can put a little bit of glue onto your figure where you'd like the center of the black to stick. So avoid putting too much on because it will bleed. I've just got enough in the middle of that eye white right in the center just to hold the piece on. And then we can attach the second one. So I'm just going to press that on gently around the outside edge. Don't worry too much about the corn flour because when it's dry, you can either steam it or just brush that off. That will come off nicely. So now he's got his eyes and he's looking rather cute. I have just put a little piece of kitchen towel in here to help hold up his leg as it had started to move. So the final bit is for me to show you how to make the lily pad. For the lily pad, I had some leftover green paste, which I've rolled to about 3mm thickness, slightly thinner. And I've got a circle cutter here. It could be any size circle cutter, or you could even cut this freehand. Use your cutting wheel to cut in a curvy line. This is going to give him like, it's a bit like a wedge like the eye, but it's more rounded. You can just use your fingers to round it off. So having taken that piece out, use the sharp end of your Dresden veining tool and from the center, draw in some lines. Then I've got five balls of white, roughly the same size, and we just squish those together. They're nice and crack free, and I can drop a piece of just a ball of yellow in the center, and that would be your lily pad. And the idea here is that you can place, when you transfer him onto the cake, you can place a lily pad on first that he can sit on, and then you've got a little lily in the water. There's a smaller one here because you may find that you're going to unbalance your figure and he'll start to lean back, so you could put a smaller one at the back if you wanted to. This could also be a different shade to give it more interest. And there you have your cute little frog character. So I hope you've enjoyed making him, and feel free to have a look at the website to see what other projects we've got that you can have a go at, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye now.